opposition, we have Leo. For the second government proposition speaker, we have Dr. Cindy Abbas. And for the second opposition speaker, we have Jeo. For the government whip, we have Sean Kyle. And last but not the least, for the opposition whip, we have Kiki. Debating on the motion, assuming technology exists, this House suggests genetic engineering to make humans more resistant to the effects of climate change. So for the government side, we have the first speaker, the opening government. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche was right. When the circumstances of living can no longer be changed, it is our choices that will define our ability to survive in the next few years. So we think that the effects of global warming has complete point of irreversibility. Number one, multiple studies have already proven that the rate of natural regeneration is severely lagging behind the rate of environmental destruction that currently exists. Now, secondly, climate change denialists hold so much political power right now that it is very difficult for us to change this particular trend and allowing for greater social action with the type of social capital that we have now. And most importantly, the effects of climate change are not imagined. Climate change is tangible, it is pressing, and it is real. Now, it means that we are already experiencing the rising temperatures and low oxygen levels, for example. It means that we already are exposed to greater harmful UV rays already because of the lack of ozone layer. And thirdly, there is already rise of sea levels that will potentially lead us to not being able to live on land anymore. And that is why we stand from the opening government. The stand from the opening government is very clear that human evolution is natural and necessary, and we think that we have to use this particular technology for us to enable human evolution and their ability to survive. The goal from the opening government is to increase the survivability of humans, because we will concede that not all kinds of policies will assure 100% survival of all human beings. But this is about the marginal benefit of increasing the survivability rates of human beings, especially when we still cannot go to Mars and rehabilitate there, for example. Now, the working model from the opening government has 3 points. Number one, this model is going to be publicly available, meaning without regard of your class, your gender, your financial status. We will allow access to everyone. This means that we are going to harshly reallocate government budget. For example, we are going to take away money that the government spent on war on drugs, for example, and we reallocate it for this type of project. Secondly, it is going to be mandatory for all state citizens given the immediacy and urgency of this particular concern. We will provide a super drug, for example, that will induce the desirable and superior genetic alteration for survival. Third point, I would also want to highlight that this will go side by side with other existing state programs and efforts that will allow us to transition humans to a better living condition, given that the condition present now is very deleterious, which would allow humans to transition to a better living condition, for example, in another planet or under the water, for example, of course, given the available technology. So the point of this matter is to ensure that individuals are going to receive the proper and necessary interventions and be served better in the opening government's model. So as Prime Minister of this debate, I have 3 arguments. First, my first argumentation is how genetic reengineering is the next logical step of human evolution. Second argument, why the current alternatives available to the opposition side is never enough or not enough. And third, I am going to argue the pragmatic benefits of our model. For my first argumentation, the premise is very, very simple. Human evolution is a natural process, and humans evolved from primates because there was a need for them to evolve. There was a need for them to survive. Conversely, when we have to change something, it is because there is an urgent need for us to do so. The same type of principle applies to this debate. There is an urgent need for us to survive, especially with the immediacy of the problem, the adverse and deleterious effects of climate change. This is very real and very, very, very pressing that we do not have to wait. Do we have to wait for our bodies to make antibodies on a pandemic? No, we make vaccines. We use technology to our advantage. In conclusion to my first argument, genetic reengineering is the next logical process for us to evolve. This argument is very important in this debate because it is largely tokenistic. In the opposition's model, I believe that this technology still exists, but the problem is that they are not going to use this. This technology is a perfect match to our needs, especially now, because climate change poses an irreversible harm and we cannot correct its effects. We cannot correct its effects. We cannot bring back to what it was before. We also accept the worst case scenario in this debate that we will not be able to reverse an individual's genetic composition or genetic makeup if it is the only way for us to survive. For my second argument, why is the alternatives of the opposition not enough? Number one, natural evolution for humans takes a very, very, very long time. When you compare that to the urgency, that we have now, or the urgency of the problem now, it is just necessary that we respond to it quickly, as swift as possible. Otherwise, it will be us and our children and our future grandchildren that is going to die. Most importantly, human evolution and our capability to evolve is very limited to the circumstances that exist. Now, on the government side, we think that genetic evolution allows us to surpass this particular barrier that prevents us to survive in a greater rate. So ultimately, the alternatives of the opposition will never be enough. Why is this pragmatically beneficial for these individuals? Now, when you talk about this particular super drug that I have mentioned earlier, or modifying your genetic makeup, modifying a human's genetic composition, it means that you are going to produce more melanin, for example, so that you will not die from the very harmful UV exposure. Secondly, it also means that you will be able to function with less oxygen or even without oxygen to survive. It may also allow you to grow gills, for example, to survive under the sea because of how fast the sea levels are rising. So that is why this meta-analysis is very important because number one, this is the only way for the state to ensure that it is able to live up to, this is the only way for the state to live up to the paternal obligation that it has towards us. And most importantly, it will enable humans to be more functional because the less they are concerned about all the externalities of the world, the more they are able to pursue important things that matter, that actually matter, to pursue the things that they want. Ultimately, I have proven to you three things. Number one, human evolution is necessary and genetic reengineering is the next logical step. Number two, alternatives of the opposition will not be enough. And thirdly, this motion and these arguments that I have presented to you are pragmatically beneficial. And with that, I am proud to propose.